Everyone, today I want to share a simple story how daily home practice completely changed my English. It wasn't a big course or an expensive tutor, it was small habits done every day, right at home. And today I'd like to highlight 6 key practices that made the biggest difference. Reading for 10 minutes every day may sound too simple to make a real difference, but this small habit became one of the most powerful tools in improving my English. At first, I didn't think 10 minutes could change anything. It felt too short, almost insignificant. But what I discovered was that the true power of this habit was not in the length of time, but in the consistency. 10 minutes is easy to fit into any day. I could do it in the morning with breakfast, during a short break, or right before going to sleep. Because it was easy, I never skipped it. And because I never skipped it, the progress started to build quietly but steadily. In the beginning, I chose very simple materials, short articles, children's stories, social media posts, and easy English books. I didn't worry about difficult vocabulary or complicated grammar. My only goal was to enjoy reading and make it part of my routine. I discovered that reading something enjoyable helped me stay motivated. When I forced myself to read something too hard or too boring, I lost focus quickly. But when I chose topics I truly liked, travel, technology, self-improvement, or stories about people, those 10 minutes became something I looked forward to instead of something I had to do. Bombien, as I read every day, I started noticing words that appeared again and again. At first, I didn't understand them, but repeated exposure made them feel familiar. That's when I realized that learning vocabulary naturally, through daily reading, was much more effective than memorizing long lists of words. When a word appeared in a story or article, I saw how it was used in a sentence, what feeling it carried, and how it connected to other words. This helped me remember it more deeply and use it confidently later. And another important change happened in the way I understood sentence structure. English sentences have their own rhythm, their own flow. By reading regularly, my brain started picking up these patterns without me even noticing. I began to understand how ideas were connected, how transitions were used, and how writers expressed opinions or described events. This silent learning later showed up in my writing and speaking. I could express my thoughts more naturally because I had absorbed real examples from everyday reading. Bleen's 10 minutes a day also helped improve my focus. At first, I found myself getting distracted, rereading the same line, or losing track of the meaning. But over time, my ability to stay focused in English improved. My reading speed increased, and I felt less tired when reading longer passages. This made me more confident when I had to read for school, work, or exams. One unexpected benefit was the cultural knowledge I gained. Through simple stories and articles, I learned about different traditions, lifestyles, and perspectives from English-speaking countries. Understanding culture helped me understand the language better. Words and expressions often made more sense when I understood the context behind them. It also made conversations with others more interesting because I could connect with topics and references that are common in English-speaking environments. The most powerful part of this 10-minute habit was how it changed my relationship with English. Before, English felt like a subject I had to study. After building this reading habit, it became a natural part of my day. It became something I did for myself, not just for an exam or a grade. Reading gave me moments of quiet learning, inspiration, and even relaxation. Kamalian. In the end, reading for just 10 minutes each day taught me one important lesson. Small habits, when done consistently, can create big results. What began as a simple practice slowly transformed my vocabulary, my comprehension, my confidence, and my connection with the English language. And all it required was 10 minutes every single day. Bundes speaking out loud, even when I was alone, became one of the most surprising and effective ways to improve my English. At first, it felt strange and even a little embarrassing to talk to myself. I worried that I might sound silly or make too many mistakes. But over time, I learned that this simple practice was one of the most powerful tools I had. Speaking alone created a safe environment where I could experiment with the language, push myself to use new words, and build confidence without fear of judgment. It became a personal space where I could grow freely at my own pace. In the beginning, I started very small. I would describe basic things around me, what I was doing, what I was thinking, or what I planned to do later. I said things like, I'm making breakfast, or I need to finish my homework, or I feel tired. In the end, reading for just 10 minutes each day taught me one important lesson. Small habits, when done consistently, can create big results. What began as a simple practice slowly transformed my vocabulary, my comprehension, my confidence, and my connection with the English language. And all it required was 10 minutes every single day. Speaking out loud, even when I was alone, became one of the most surprising and effective ways to improve my English. At first, it felt strange and even a little embarrassing to talk to myself. I worried that I might sound silly or make too many mistakes. But over time, I learned that this simple practice was one of the most powerful tools I had. Speaking alone created a safe environment where I could experiment with the language, push myself to use new words, and build confidence without fear of judgment. It became a personal space where I could grow freely at my own pace. In the beginning, I started very small. I would describe basic things around me, what I was doing, what I was thinking, or what I planned to do later. I said things like, I'm making breakfast, or I need to finish my homework, or I feel tired today. These simple sentences helped me get used to forming English thoughts in real time. Even though they were easy, they trained my mouth and mind to work together. Soon, speaking out loud became less awkward, and I became more comfortable hearing my own voice in English. As the days went by, I began to challenge myself with longer and more complex sentences. I practiced explaining ideas, telling short stories, or giving imaginary presentations. Sometimes, I pretended I was teaching someone a concept I had just learned. Other times, I played out conversations I wished I could have, or practiced responses to common questions. This kind of role, playing, helped me develop spontaneity. It taught me how to react in English without having to translate everything in my head first. One of the most valuable parts of speaking alone was that it helped me identify areas where I struggled. When I couldn't express something clearly, I realized there was a word I needed to learn or a grammar point I didn't fully understand. This awareness guided my learning. Instead of studying random vocabulary, I learned the words that I actually needed. Instead of memorizing grammar rules, I practiced them naturally through speaking. The mistakes I made became stepping stones rather than obstacles. Another benefit was the improvement in my pronunciation. When speaking in a classroom or with other people, I used to feel self-conscious about mispronouncing words. But when I spoke alone, I could repeat difficult words as many times as I wanted. I listened carefully to how my mouth moved, how the sounds flowed, and how the rhythm of English felt different from my native language. I even imitated voices from movies or podcasts, trying to match their tone and intonation. These small efforts strengthened my speaking muscles and made my overall pronunciation clearer and more confident. This daily habit also boosted my fluency. The more I spoke, the less I hesitated. Words came more quickly, sentences formed more smoothly, and I felt less pressure when speaking with others. I no longer panicked when I needed to respond in English. Practicing alone prepared me for real conversations in a way that textbooks never could. It allowed me to experiment with the language freely, without anyone judging my mistakes or correcting me too harshly. Speaking out loud also had a powerful psychological effect. It gave me confidence. It taught me that I could express myself even when I wasn't perfect. It showed me that improvement comes from practice, not from waiting to feel ready. Every day, I proved to myself that I was capable of speaking English, and that belief slowly transformed my attitude. Instead of being afraid of making mistakes, I became eager to learn from them. In the end, speaking out loud, even when alone, turned into a private training ground where I could grow stronger, braver, and more fluent. It taught me that the voice we practice in private becomes the voice we use in public. And through this simple daily habit, my English speaking skills and my confidence changed more than I ever expected. Keeping a daily English journal became one of the most meaningful and transformative habits in my language learning journey. At first, I thought journaling was simply about writing down what happened during my day, but I soon discovered it was so much more. It became a space where I could practice expressing my thoughts freely, explore new vocabulary, and connect emotionally with the language. This daily routine slowly changed the way I thought, wrote, and even spoke in English. In the beginning, my journal entries were very short. Sometimes I wrote only 2 or 3 sentences because I was worried about making mistakes or running out of ideas. But even those small entries were valuable. They forced me to think in English for a few minutes each day, and that was enough to start building a habit. Over time, those few minutes grew naturally into longer writing sessions because I became more comfortable expressing myself in English. I started to enjoy the quiet moment of reflection that journaling gave me. As I continued writing, I realized that journaling helped me identify the gaps in my English. Whenever I struggled to express an idea, it showed me what vocabulary I was missing. If I didn't know how to describe a feeling or situation, I would look up new words or phrases and write them down. Because I used those new words immediately in meaningful sentences, they became easier to remember. Instead of memorizing vocabulary lists, I was learning words that were directly connected to my own experiences, which made the learning more personal and effective. Another important benefit of journaling was how it improved my grammar naturally. When I wrote daily, I started noticing patterns in the mistakes I made. Sometimes I used the wrong tense, or my sentences were too long and confusing. Instead of feeling discouraged, I treated my journal as a safe place to practice and improve. I didn't worry about being perfect, but I did try to learn from my patterns. Gradually, my sentences became clearer and more organized. I began to understand how to express complex ideas using simpler, more natural structures. Over time, these improvements appeared in my speaking as well, because the practice of forming sentences in writing helped me think more smoothly in English. Keeping a journal also strengthened my emotional connection to the language. When I wrote about my feelings, challenges, hopes, or worries, English stopped being just a subject. It became a tool for self-expression. Writing about my experiences made me feel more confident and more connected to myself. On difficult days, writing in English helped me clear my mind. On happy days, it helped me capture memories. This emotional connection motivated me to keep practicing, even when progress felt slow. One of the biggest surprises was how journaling improved my ability to tell stories and describe events. I became better at organizing my thoughts into a beginning, middle, and end. I learned how to describe places, people, and emotions in a way that made sense. This skill helped me in conversations, presentations, and even in writing essays. The daily practice of turning my experiences into words sharpened my ability to communicate clearly and meaningfully. Another advantage was that my journal became a record of my progress. When I looked back at earlier entries, I could see how much I had grown. Sentences that once felt difficult became easy. Ideas that I struggled to express became clear and natural. Seeing this improvement motivated me to continue the habit because it reminded me that progress is real, even when it feels slow. In the end, keeping a daily English journal was not just about improving my writing. It changed the way I interacted with the language. It taught me to think in English, express myself honestly, and embrace mistakes as part of the learning process. Through this simple daily practice, I discovered that writing is not just a skill, but a powerful tool for growth, reflection, and transformation. Listening to English every day became one of the most natural and enjoyable ways for me to improve my language skills. At first, I underestimated how powerful daily listening could be. I thought that listening would help only with understanding spoken English, but over time, I realized it influenced every part of my learning, my pronunciation, vocabulary, fluency, confidence, and even my sense of rhythm in the language. What made daily listening so effective was that it did not feel like studying. It felt like a part of everyday life, something I could do while walking, cleaning, cooking, or relaxing. This made it easier to stay consistent and enjoy the process. At the beginning, I chose very simple listening materials. Short videos, songs with clear lyrics, children's stories, or basic podcasts were enough. I didn't worry about understanding everything. Even if I understood only half or less, I kept listening. The goal was to let my ears get used to the sounds of English, to its speed, accents, tones, and patterns. Over time, the language stopped sounding like a fast stream of noise and became something more familiar and predictable. My brain started recognizing common phrases automatically, even before I fully understood them. One of the most important benefits of daily listening was learning pronunciation naturally. Instead of only reading words and guessing how they should sound, I heard them spoken correctly again and again. I listened to how native speakers connected their words, how certain letters were softened or skipped, and how the intonation changed depending on emotion or meaning. These details are difficult to learn from textbooks alone. Listening gave me a model to copy. When I later practiced speaking, I unconsciously imitated the sounds and rhythms I had heard many times. This made my pronunciation clearer and more confident. Listening every day also helped expand my vocabulary in a practical way. Hearing a word in context made it easier to understand and remember. Instead of learning words as isolated items, I learned how they were used in real sentences. Sometimes I would hear the same word in different videos or conversations, and each time my understanding grew stronger. Even when I did not fully understand a sentence, I could often guess the meaning from the situation, the tone of voice, or the surrounding words. This natural process of learning made vocabulary feel more alive and useful. Another huge advantage was how listening improved my fluency. The more I listened, the more natural English sounded in my mind. I began thinking in English more often because the rhythm and structure of the language became familiar. When I spoke, the phrases came to me more quickly. I no longer had to translate everything from my native language. Daily listening trained my brain to respond faster and with more confidence. Daily listening also introduced me to different accents and speaking styles. English is spoken in many ways around the world, and at first, this variety confused me. But by listening to speakers from different countries, regions, and backgrounds, I became more flexible. I learned to focus on the meaning rather than getting stuck on unfamiliar pronunciations. This helped me feel more comfortable in real-life conversations, where everyone speaks differently. Listening every day also taught me about culture, humor, and everyday expressions. Through movies, interviews, and podcasts, I learned how people express feelings, make jokes, tell stories, or discuss opinions. This cultural knowledge made communication richer and more natural. I began to understand not only the words, but also the emotions and attitudes behind them. Perhaps the most valuable part of listening daily was the motivation it gave me. Hearing fluent English every day inspired me to keep improving. Even on days when I felt tired or busy, a few minutes of listening made me feel connected to the language and reminded me why I wanted to learn. Listening turned English into a daily companion rather than a school subject. In the end, listening to English every day helped shape my understanding, my confidence, and my voice. It showed me that language is not just learned, It is absorbed, felt, and experienced. And by making listening a consistent part of my routine, I allowed English to become a natural and enjoyable part of my life. Learning 5 new words a day may seem like a small and simple task, but it became one of the most effective ways to grow my English vocabulary in a meaningful and lasting way. In the beginning, I tried to memorize long lists of words, thinking that learning more words at once would make me progress faster, but I quickly became overwhelmed. I forgot many of the words I had memorized because they had no real connection to my daily life. When I changed my approach to learning just 5 new words each day, everything became easier, more manageable, and more enjoyable. This slow and steady method helped me build a strong vocabulary foundation that I could actually use. The first thing I noticed was that learning 5 words a day reduced pressure. It removed the feeling of being rushed or stressed. With just 5 words, I could take the time to understand each one properly, how to pronounce it, how to use it in a sentence, what part of speech it was, and what feelings or ideas it carried. Instead of memorizing meaningless definitions, I learned how to use each word naturally. This made the learning process deeper and more effective than simply memorizing. I also made it a habit to choose words that were connected to my daily experiences. For example, if I had a conversation and didn't know how to express something, I would select a word related to that idea. If I read an article and noticed a new word that seemed interesting or useful, I added it to my list for the day. This made vocabulary learning more relevant. The words I learned were directly tied to my life, so it was easier to remember them and practice using them. Every time I learned a new word, I used it immediately in a sentence. Writing the word in my journal or saying it out loud helped strengthen my memory. Sometimes I created simple sentences. Other times I challenged myself with more complex ones. For example, if I learned the word embrace, I might write, "I want to embrace new opportunities this year." These sentences help the new words become part of my active vocabulary instead of staying stuck in my notebook as forgotten notes. Another important part of this habit was reviewing the words regularly. At the end of each week, I looked back at the words I had learned. This review helped me see which words had already become familiar and which ones needed more attention. By reviewing, I reinforced my memory and ensured the words stayed in my long-term vocabulary. I didn't just learn words, I kept them alive through repetition. Learning 5 new words a day also made me more observant when reading or listening to English. Whenever I encountered a word I recognized, I felt a small sense of achievement. These moments motivated me to continue learning. Over time, I noticed that my vocabulary began to grow naturally. I understood more conversations, more articles, and more content. I also started using more precise and expressive language in my writing and speaking. Instead of relying on the same simple words, I could choose from a wider range of vocabulary to express myself clearly and accurately. This habit also taught me the importance of consistency. 5 words a day may not seem like much, but over a month, it becomes 150 words. Over a year, it becomes more than 1,800 words. This steady accumulation is powerful. It proved to me that small habits, when practiced consistently, can lead to big results. I didn't need to study for hours or memorize long lists. I only needed to stay committed to a simple daily practice. Most importantly, learning 5 new words a day changed my relationship with vocabulary. It made learning enjoyable rather than stressful. It allowed me to build my skills step by step, with confidence and purpose. And as my vocabulary continued to grow, my communication skills improved in every area: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. This simple habit helped me express myself more clearly, understand others more easily, and feel more connected to the English language. Practicing consistently, not perfectly, became one of the most important lessons in my journey of improving English. For a long time, I believed that progress only came from doing everything flawlessly. I thought I had to speak without mistakes, write without errors, and understand everything completely. This mindset created pressure, frustration, and fear. Every time I made a mistake, I felt discouraged. Every time I didn't understand something, I felt like I was failing. But eventually, I learned that perfection was not the key to improvement. Consistency was. When I shifted my focus from being perfect to simply showing up every day, everything about my learning experience changed for the better. In the beginning, consistent practice felt slow and sometimes even unimportant. Doing a little English every day, 10 minutes here, 5 minutes there, seemed too easy to make a real difference. But after a few weeks, I started to notice something surprising. The small daily habits were building a strong foundation. Even on days when I didn't learn much, just touching the language helped my brain stay connected to it. English stopped feeling like something I had to study. It became part of my daily life. This regular exposure made learning more natural and less stressful. I also stopped being afraid of making mistakes. When perfection was my goal, mistakes felt like failures. But when consistency became my goal, mistakes turned into opportunities. They showed me exactly what I needed to improve, and they gave me direction. Instead of avoiding difficult conversations or challenging texts, I started to face them because I knew mistakes were part of the process. I realized that making a mistake was better than staying silent or avoiding practice. Errors became stepping stones instead of barriers. Practicing consistently helped me develop confidence. Every day I practiced, even for a few minutes, I proved to myself that I was capable of learning. I didn't need long study sessions or perfect performance to feel proud of myself. Just showing up was enough. This daily commitment strengthened my belief in my own abilities. Over time, I noticed that I could speak more naturally, write more easily, and understand more quickly. The stability of daily practice built a strong sense of trust in my progress. Another advantage of focusing on consistency was that it kept me from burning out. When I tried to be perfect, I spent hours studying, pushing myself too hard, and feeling exhausted. Eventually, I lost motivation because the process felt too heavy. But with consistent practice, I allowed myself to work at a comfortable pace. Some days I practiced a lot. Other days I practiced a little. Both were okay as long as I kept moving forward. This balanced approach made learning sustainable and enjoyable. Consistency also helped me maintain momentum. When I practiced every day, even lightly, I never lost connection with the language. I didn't need to start over after long breaks. Instead, each day built upon the previous one. The progress was steady, like climbing a staircase one step at a time. I didn't jump 5 steps at once, but I also didn't fall back down. This steady rhythm kept me motivated and positive. Most importantly, practicing consistently, not perfectly, changed my attitude toward learning. I began to appreciate the journey instead of stressing about the results. I started to enjoy small successes, understanding a new phrase, using a new word, finishing a short paragraph in English. These little victories gave me energy to continue. I learned to celebrate progress instead of chasing perfection. In the end, the most powerful lesson I discovered was that perfection is not required to grow. What truly matters is showing up, trying, learning, and continuing. Consistency created real improvement in my English slowly, gently, but powerfully. It taught me that progress is not about being perfect, it is about being persistent. Through this approach, English became not just a skill,